Shabbat Shalom, everybody. It's really nice to see you all. And I love it when people have their cameras on, just so we get a little glimpse. I know not everybody wants to or can at any given moment, but it's really nice to see everybody. And I'm going to embarrass you guys. You just went off my screen here, but love the little Shabbat kiss mosses. It's all good. And I love seeing everybody's COVID beards and long hair get even more long and crazy. We will get out of this one day, but for the moment, I just feel shaggy and shaggy and shaggy. So Shabbat Shalom from my shaggy and warm heart. We have an opportunity to get a chance to say hello to other people and see a little bit of shagginess up close, say hello and Shabbat Shalom and see what's going on in people's lives, share something wonderful even in this crazy and difficult and challenging week. So Gordon, if you'll send us along, look forward to seeing whoever randomly appears in my room.
Welcome back. I think we're all slowly filtering back in from our various meeting rooms. So as we filter back in, we're going to go ahead and start our service with candle lighting. And this evening, we have some folks to help us out. Leslie and Merle Rabin are going to do some candle lighting with us. And we are spotlighting them specially because, as I understand it, they have a big anniversary coming up. It is their 49th anniversary coming up tomorrow, which is a lot of years in my book, and I'm very impressed. And I invite you guys to tell us anything you'd like, either about your anniversary or your candles. Once you're unmuted, which I'm certain you will be soon. Not quite there, Leslie, not quite.
No, you're muted, you're muted. You're muted, we can't hear you.
Yeah, we definitely can't hear you, but if you can't unmute, here, ask to unmute, maybe that will help. There you go.
Am I unmuted?
Yes, you are.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So yes, tomorrow is our 49th anniversary. And we just discovered that all the pots and pans we got for our wedding are completely worn out and we have to replace them. But here are our candlesticks. So the story behind these candlesticks, I hope that 4 is not an unlucky number because there's a lot of 4s in the story. It's our 49th anniversary. And my mother bought these candlesticks in 1948 when I was 4 years old. And I had just started my religious education and my parents weren't observant Jews. So I came home from religious school and I said, Mommy, God is going to punish us because we don't light the Shabbos candle. So she went out and bought these candlesticks and lit the Shabbos candles, which I'm about to do now.
That is an excellent story. Thank you.
I think once every 49 years, you guys should absolutely go out and buy new pots. That's
I think you're right.
Yeah, that's our plan.
Yeah, you've earned it.
Okay, so Abby, you said you were going to sing for me because I can't sing.
Yes, and by that I mean I'm going to invite our visiting once more Cantor to sing for us. So Cantor Newman, if you would, please lead us in the blessing.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam אשר קידשנו במצוותיו וציוונו להדליק נר של שבת.
Shabbat Shalom. I forgot to say at the very beginning that I'm Rabbi Jessica Graf, that I'm joined by Rabbi Abby Phelps, and that you just heard the beautiful voice of Cantor Richard Newman. So we together wish you Rabbins a huge Mazal Tov, and may your pots last another 49 years. Delicious meals that you enjoy together.
I'll let you know.
That can be our new Ad Me'ava stream, right? Like, may
I'll say it at the next wedding. I think I have a wedding coming up in August, I just learned. People are really excited to get married. So I will say, may your pots last 49 and 49.
Beautiful. Well, on that note, why don't we continue with our service? We begin, of course, with Lecha Dodi, the song in which we invite Shabbat as our beloved to come and join us for these 25 hours. So if you can, please join us in singing Lecha Dodi.
Lecha Dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. 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 Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad, hishmiyanu el hamiyuchad, Adonai echad u'shemo echad, l'shem ultiferet v'litila. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha, ki mekor habracha, merosh mikedem nesucha, sof maaseh b'machshavat tchila. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Hitoreri, ki va'orech kumi ori, uri shir daberi, kevod Adonai alayich nigla. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Boi v'shalom ateret bala, gam besimcha u'tzola, toch emunei am segula. Boi chala, Lecha Dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela.
We now invite you to rise as able and join us to become formally a prayer community together with the Baruch.
lai 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 yai lai 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 lai. Baruch hu et Adonai hamevorach. Baruch Adonai hamevorach leolam vaed. Yai lai 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 yai lai 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 lai.
I invite you now to take a moment to breathe deeply. Take a deep breath in. Hold on to it for a moment. Let it out. And put yourself in a position to do as we are about to instruct one another to do, to listen. Listen to the things that you can hear in the world around you, the cries of joy, the cries of pain. Listen to the sounds that you can hear coming from within your own heart. We remind ourselves, we remind one another to listen for all of these things when we recite the Shema. Please join us.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Vaed.
Now we recall the moment when we crossed the Sea of Reeds. We left the land of Mitzrayim, the narrow place, and we looked out upon the vast expanse of the wilderness and understood that we were free. And today we think of that freedom. Even though our physical freedom is still restricted, we're still being very careful to keep our distance, to care for ourselves and one another as best we can. We continue to appreciate the freedom that we express and enjoy by being here together and by continuing to live our lives in accordance with our values. Please join us in Mi Chamocha.
Mi chamocha bailim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh, nora tehilot osef ele, nora tehilot osef ele, malechutecha ra'u vanecha, bokei hayam lifnei Moshe u'Miriam, zeili, zeili, anu ve'ameru, Adonai imloch leolam vaed, Adonai imloch leolam vaed, Adonai imloch leolam vaed. V'ne'emar ki fad Adonai et Yaakov, ugalo miyad chazak mimenu, Baruch atah Adonai gal Yisrael.
I wouldn't normally read from the chat in services, but I've just noticed something that I want to share. David Newman shared in the chat that we are still free, even in isolation, because we are freely choosing to do the right thing for ourselves, for those we love, and for the entire community. And I think that is a beautiful sentiment and very true. And I appreciate you sharing it, David. Thank you. We continue now with Vishamru, which we sometimes think of as being a boisterous and joyous song. And of course, it is a joyous thing to celebrate Shabbat, but it is also a peaceful thing, a quiet thing, a thing that gives us an opportunity to take a pause and to rest in our lives. And all of those aspects of Shabbat are reflected in the beautiful setting by Debbie Friedman. So if you know it, please join us in Vishamru.
Shabbat, et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat, ledorotam, berit olam, berit olam, beini uven bnei Israel, oti leolam, beini uven bnei Israel, oti leolam, ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai, et hashamayim ve'et haaretz, uvayom hashvi'i shavat vayinafash, beini uven bnei Israel, oti leolam, beini uven bnei Israel, oti leolam, vishamru v'nei Israel, et ha-Shabbat, et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat, ledorotam, berit olam, berit olam. Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi yagid tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avoteinu ve'imoteinu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, ve'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel chasadim tovim vekonei hakol, vezocher chasdei avot ve'imahot, umevi geula livnei vneihem, leman shemo be'ahava, melech ozer umoshia umagen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham ve'ezrat Sarah. Atah gibor leolam Adonai, Mechaye hakol atah rav lehoshia, Morid hatal. Mechalkel chayim bechesed, Mechaye hakol berachamim rabim, Somech noflim verofe cholim, Umatir asurim, Umekayim emunato lishenei afar, Michamocha bal gevurot, Umido melach, Melech memit umechaye, Umatzmiach Yeshua, V'ne'eman ata lehachayot hakol. Baruch atah Adonai, Mechaye hakol. Ata kadosh v'shimcha kadosh, Ukdoshim b'chol yom yehalelucha selah. Baruch atah Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh.
We now invite you to engage in a few moments of prayer on your own, praying whatever words you feel compelled to pray this evening. And as you pray, our wonderful music director, Jonathan Dimmick, will underscore that moment for us, and we will come out of that moment of silent or musically accompanied quasi-silent prayer with a Shalom Rav.
Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Ki atahu melech adon lechol hashalom. Tasim leolam, Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha, Tasim leolam, V'tov b'einecha levarech et amecha Yisrael, b'chol eit u'v'chol shah, b'shlomech. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha,
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. On this Shabbat, we read yet another of the double parshiot that we find in our Torah. This time, we read Matot Maseh, which means tribes and journeys. It's about our identity, and I love that as a title, a good one maybe for my own autobiography, or anything written about our people, which is the Torah, basically. It's our autobiography. Tribes and journeys tell of our identity. They tell our story for ourselves and posterity. Who are we? Who are we with? And where have we been? How did we get here? Every year when I read this, the beginning of the Torah portion of Matot is troubling because it begins, as we're talking about the tribes, with a little kind of aside, maybe, about vows. Vows that a man can annul if he hears a woman make. Vows that wouldn't be annulled if a man made. Vows that might be annulled if the person making the statement seems not to be able to represent herself or doesn't know what she's talking about or doesn't mean what she said. It's a story somehow of silencing. And I've never completely understood this. I will say that Ollie Feldman, who is one of our seniors, spoke earlier at our first Shabbat service for the Towers, for the community in San Francisco. And Ollie talked a little bit about this beginning being very interesting as bookends, and ending the Torah portion with mention of the daughters of Tzalofachad, this big kind of feminist story, and this anti-feminist seeming beginning. So most years when I read this beginning, I'm in that place kind of grumbling about what does it mean that a man can annul a woman's vows? This particular year, though, I read it differently with this backdrop of cancel culture that seems to be all around us. The annulling and canceling of someone else's words, which seems to have come right back into modern times in a different context, but here we are. So what is cancel culture? It's this modern phenomenon of silencing someone, of canceling them out and Xing them out when we don't like what they've said. So nowadays, or even in these last few weeks in particular, if someone says something that seems inappropriate or offensive or not in alignment with what we think is right, people get cut off. Ideas get canceled or deleted, even sometimes offensive ones. And very interesting responses have arisen in the last few weeks. I want to give you a few examples from the news because so much has been swirling around. And as an aside, I said to someone the other day that even as time feels like it goes slowly during these COVID weeks, in some ways, the news and what's going on in society between people seems to be going at a kind of whiplash pace. My head keeps spinning around trying to keep up with the news. So recently in the news has been the story of Amy Cooper and Christian Cooper, of course, two unrelated people who found themselves in the Ramble in New York's Central Park. We know the story about the white woman who was out with her dog in a birding area and the black man who asked her to put her dog on a leash. Well, her outrageous and insulting insistence that she would call the police and say that she was being harassed and even attacked by a black man opened conversation about racism in America. But after the incident, Amy Cooper lost all. She lost her dog, she lost her job, and even there was an attempt to press charges by the state of New York. When asked if Christian Cooper would be willing to press charges against this woman who had made false accusations against him, he said, no, it's enough. It's enough. Enough has been canceled. Enough has been taken away. Then there was the story of the couple in San Francisco walking through their neighborhood in Pacific Heights, the white couple, who questioned a Filipino-American resident of Pacific Heights who was sketching a Black Lives Matter design on the front of his house. They questioned him, thinking that he must certainly be a vandal and not a person who could live in Pacific Heights. They both lost their jobs. They were canceled out. Some of you may have followed the story of Jessica Mulroney. I admit I am a huge sucker for any news about Meghan Markle, so I followed this story carefully. Her supposed best friend forever, BFF, canceled after she made inappropriate threats to another blogger who happened to be a style blogger like she is, but a woman who is Black. At Bernardus in Carmel Valley, beautiful hotel, spa, and restaurant, a tech CEO's obnoxious outburst and disrespectful language about the Asian American family celebrating a birthday at the next table got him, you know what, canceled. There he was, he quit his job and has been X'd out of society. Police across America have been canceled. Names across America on the front of schools, hospitals, and other communal institutions have been canceled or removed. And of course, statues around America representing the Confederacy, other parts of our history that we no longer agree with have been canceled or toppled, removing even statues of Jefferson, Washington, and other founding members of our society. We have removed or made an effort to remove the mistakes made around us, which haven't made the problems go away. They've only silenced the people who have said things that don't fit with our values of today. Think of the implications of this cancel culture. Conversation has been stopped, and yes, I don't deny that Amy Cooper and the couple in Pacific Heights were totally out of bounds, racist, bigoted, and obnoxious. But by canceling what they had to say, we canceled the conversation about the underlying problem. Some of the alternatives that have arisen have caused us to think too. What else could we do besides entirely annul, cancel, or silence someone's words when we don't agree with them or we don't like them, or even when we find them deeply insulting? Well, here's an example. Take note, because this may be the only time that I ever reference the NFL. Deshaun Jackson, wide receiver for the Philadelphia Eagles, many of you probably have read about, posted all kinds of anti-Semitic comments online, even falsely crediting Hitler for one quotation. He believes that the Jews run America, have oppressed Black people, and in his false worldview, had no problem putting this out there on the internet for many of the fans and people who watch his every move to see, spreading hatred and bigotry. At first, I wanted Deshaun Jackson canceled too. Why not? Everyone else seems to get canceled when they say things that are offensive or insulting. He could have been canceled too. But what followed was interesting. He wasn't canceled at all. The Jewish owners of the team met with him and expressed their disappointment and outrage. They decided that he should learn about the meaning of his ideas and the words that he so freely used. They invited him to meet with a Holocaust survivor and to do some education around the kind of language that anti-Semitism that he stirred up, and the anti-Semitism and hatred, honoring Hitler's words, honoring Hitler as an important figure in history, the pain that that might cause. At the same time, in response, something interesting happened in the NFL as one of its other stars, Julian Edelman, spoke out from a perspective of one of the very few Jewish football players in the professional football world. He invited Deshaun Jackson to join him in learning about the painful history of the Jewish and the African American people in the United States and around the world. He explained why quoting Hitler would be offensive and offered to have a mutual day of learning at museums in Washington, first at the Holocaust Museum, followed by a trip to the Museum of African American History, and then lunch to discuss some difficult topics. He said, now famously, in his remarks to Deshaun Jackson in his letter and his invitation, we need to have uncomfortable conversations if we're going to have real change. So the decision was made by people in power at the NFL that instead of shutting down this conversation or Deshaun Jackson, perhaps there might be an opportunity for some teshuvah, some turning around, some learning to incorporate the mistakes that had been made into a different future. Would it be possible to take Deshaun Jackson's stardom and newfound learning about the Holocaust and educate others? With all of this, in the last couple of weeks, something else interesting happened just this week. Barry Weiss, who was a columnist for the New York Times, resigned. I don't know how many of you read her letter of resignation to the New York Times, but she sent a powerful letter to A.G. Sulzberger, publisher of the Times, and said that the wrong think, which people had defined her as having, it didn't match with the thinking of others, with those that she claimed were woke 20 and 30 somethings and liberal 40 plus somethings at the paper, that didn't match with her opinions of the world, led her to be shut down. She said that even the New York Times, a place considered to be an open society of its own, a place that inspires all of us to think and to question and to ask any questions that come to mind to bring about dialogue and real learning, had no place for dialogue in our current society. Barry Weiss said that she was bullied, silenced, canceled. And she pushed back. She pushed back, resigning from the New York Times, saying that it wasn't a place that allowed for free dialogue. And as such, she couldn't stay there. Her resignation, her bold and brave resignation, raises questions for our society. How can we have the kinds of uncomfortable conversations that Edelman talked about in his note to Deshaun Jackson? How can we have an exchange of ideas? How can we grow? Even when someone says something offensive, how can we learn to help them, to teach them, to understand them, so that we might be able to change their minds? Too often in our society of fake news or shut down news, we don't talk. We are controlled by what is considered to be free press, but it really isn't. The news, the ideas, and even our own history are being silenced, are being nullified, are being removed. There is no place for debate and dialogue in our society, just silence. Where is the discussion and the learning? There have been many ideas floated about a museum of Confederacy, a place maybe where statues that represent things that we no longer want to honor, in a culture that has evolved, and a value system where we see things differently now from the way we did a couple of 100 years ago. Perhaps there would be a way to put all of those statues that we no longer want in our public places into a museum of learning, and a place where people could go, like the Holocaust Museum or the Museum of African American History, to study some painful history and to open some honest and difficult conversations. Instead of just canceling the history, toppling the statues, breaking them up into little pieces of stone, of marble, and silencing it, like the vows at the beginning of our Torah portion, that a husband or a father might not like. Perhaps we can take the words and, instead of silencing others, use these to educate, use these to dialogue, use these to get at the real issues underlying statements that we don't like, some of them even very offensive statements. I said a few minutes ago that this double Torah portion, Matot Maseh, represents the tribes, the people that we are, that we're comprised of, that we hang out with, that we build our identities on, and also the journeys. And so I looked, after being disappointed again with the notion of canceling someone else, of silencing someone else, at the second part of the Torah portion, at Maseh, at the beginning, which tells the story of our journey, of many legs of our journey as we went on a meandering path to get to the land of Israel and to our destination. Maseh tells the story of all of those journeys, of ideas and missteps, of mistakes, the places where we fought and where we cried and where we stumbled, of the ideas that moved us here and made us better because of the experience of going through them. Luckily, in Maseh, they are recorded. They are incorporated into the story of who we are, and they are incorporated forever into the story of our future, of where we came from and where we will go. As we find ourselves now in a modern cancel culture, the kind of cancel culture that gives some people power to cancel vows, to cancel ideas, to cancel words, I encourage us to think of the lesson that comes just after this first part of the Torah portion of Matot, and look at what Maseh has to teach us about the winding journey through the wilderness that helps us to arrive at a people that will live on, evolved into the future. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you, Rabbi Graf, for that reminder of the importance of keeping open dialogue and making room for teshuvah. Vital, vital Jewish values. At this time in our service, we think particularly of those for whom we wish healing. Healing of the mind or the body or the soul, full and speedy healing. We think particularly this evening of Dr. Elliot Eisenberg, Marcia Greskin, and William Kurian. And to those names, I encourage you, when we pause in the middle of Misha Berach, to add any names of those to whom you wish healing tonight. Please join us in Misha Berach.
Misha Berach Avoteinu Mekor HaBracha Leimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Misha Berach Imotenu Mekor HaBracha Lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shelema, the renewal of body the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
When we come together as a community, in addition to praying for those who are in need of healing and wholeness, we also have the privilege to share some simchas, smachot, wonderful celebrations of this past week. And I know that we have many birthdays and anniversaries and other exciting things going on, even as we feel that we live in unusual times. So I want to encourage everybody to share some of their simchas on the chat so that we can see them together. We join with Cantor Newman in the words of Shehechianu as we thank God for giving us life and sustaining us and enabling us to reach this day, even through our own winding journeys.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shehechianu v'kiyamanu v'higianu lazman hazeh.
Our winding journeys would never have gotten us here without the tribes and the people who supported us and came before us, the generations who taught us how to live and how to learn and how to continue on the winding journeys. We think of our loved ones whom death has recently taken from us, those who died at this season in years past, and those whom we've drawn into our hearts with our own zichronam livracha. May their memories be for a blessing. If you're observing Shiva or Shloshim, please stand wherever you are and share a name out loud in our community. We remember for Shloshim in these first 30 days of mourning, Dr. Robert Jaffe. The perpetual memorials in our congregation are Sidney Black, Charles Einbund, Mildred Molly Einbund, Ethel Goldberg, Janet Lewis, and Art Rosenberg. If you're observing the first year of mourning for a loved one, please stand and share that name out loud where you are. The Art Site Anniversaries on this Shabbat are Felice Baum, Jean Wade Blattner, Al Choder, Beatrice Cutler, Dora Erdberg, Anne Fine, Celia Feldman, Sylvia Frank, Stephanie Kornblatt-Frommer, Anna Brett Hunt Garber, Eva Gold, Eliyahu Ben Shlomo Grabowski, Samuel Kagan, Margaret Kurian, Beverly Little, Esther Israel Pincus, Alice Brandeis Popkin, Inez Georgette Weissman, Yaakov Zabriansky. If there are others whom you are remembering on this Shabbat, please stand and say a name out loud where you are. We join you as one community, supporting all of our mourners with words of Kaddish Yatom. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, ve'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayachon v'yomechon v'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael, v'agala u'bizman kariv v'imru Amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam u'amei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei d'kudsha brichu. La'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbachata v'nechemata da'miran be'alma v'imru Amen. Yehei shlam araba min shemaya v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru Amen. Osei shalom b'mromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel ve'imru Amen. May the one who creates harmony on high bring peace to us, to all Israel, and mourners everywhere. And we say together, Amen. Please be seated. Just a few announcements on this Shabbat. Tomorrow morning, Rabbi Phelps will be leading Torah study at 9:15. Please join her in clothes or pajamas as you see fit. On Wednesday at 5 o'clock, please join Congregation Shereth Israel as I have a conversation with Mayor London Breed about current events in San Francisco. We'll be talking about the overlap of COVID-19 and the experience of being in San Francisco with that challenge and issues of racial injustice and change in our city. We are so fortunate to have the privilege of having Mayor Breed be with us just for a short time. She felt it was very important to speak out to the Jewish community and to do that at Congregation Shereth Israel. So please join us at 5 o'clock on Wednesday. The following Wednesday, the 29th, Dr. Jeremy Faust will be back with us, interviewed by Dr. Jonathan Graf about changes in what epidemiologists are understanding of this crazy pandemic that, in addition to making me just crazy with all that's going on, is making me crazy because it keeps changing. So we're trying to understand if there's anything to understand. And Dr. Jeremy Faust, who grew up in our congregation, is an epidemiologist now in Boston and a professor at Harvard, and he will be back to talk some more about what he is seeing out there. If you haven't had a chance to hear the first interview with him, he was the second guest in the COVID-19 series, and it's available to listen to, as they all are, all 6 of them now, on our, maybe all 5, it might be the 6th, on our website and on our YouTube channel. Rabbi Phelps, anything else that you wanted to add?
Only that I realized as I was thinking about Torah study tomorrow that we are now in the parashot that are the namesake of the book 5 Cities of Refuge that I often enjoy quoting. So I think we'll take a little look at what that book has to say about those parashot tomorrow morning and have a discussion about that. So please join me for that if you can.
Awesome. Gordon, anything you want to highlight?
Only to say that I want to thank everybody who's come to the High Holiday focus groups thus far. There is one more. It'll be this coming Thursday. We're going to shift the time back a little bit to accommodate folks who are not available. So it'll be immediately after Rabbi Phelps' Talmud class, as opposed to immediately before. And all of that will be in Under the Dome this week.
Outstanding. A huge thank you to Cantor Newman for being our awesome cantor with a beautiful accent. Once again, while we wait for our awesome new cantor with a slightly different, beautiful accent to join us here at Congregation Shereth Israel, your generosity of spirit and prayer and personality is a pleasure to have with us, and we're so grateful to you. And to Jonathan Dimmick for beautiful music as always. And that said, we will conclude with some beautiful music.
We will, and I'm going to take this opportunity because I can to mention that even though it's been a couple of weeks, it was in fact on the 29th of June, my parents' anniversary, their 40th anniversary. So speaking of anniversaries, I thought it might be nice for us to get a chance to celebrate them a little bit. Since we are in that wonderful position of being able to include folks in our community who aren't usually able to be here in person, but who can be here by telepresence. So I know that they're out there somewhere. If Peter, if you can, aha, there they are, if you can give them a little spotlight. And I wanted to invite my parents to say hi and also tell us a little bit about their Kiddush cup and lead us in Kiddush. So I'll be quiet now and let you go ahead.
Me too.
Hi. There is, in fact, a story about this Kiddush cup. This Kiddush cup left Kovno, Lithuania in 1906 and traveled by train to Antwerp, Belgium, and from there by boat to New York. And it belonged to my grandma, Molly, who was then 16 years old and who struck out on her own to get out of marrying a boy that she didn't want to marry. And she went on to do tremendous things, and Rabbi Abby is actually named for her. For those of you who know Abby's full name, it is Abigail Molly Phelps. So that is the story of this Kiddush cup, and it has come down to us.
And what are your names? You are Ellen Weiss Phelps and Roger Phelps, and I apologize for not introducing you properly.
I'm glad you recognized us.
But it's really nice that you guys can actually be with us even from a distance. So we're really glad to have you, and it's a nice silver lining of our pandemic sheltering in place.
We have really been enjoying being able to participate in our children's doings in the Jewish world. This is our third service today. And in fact, we're not even going to attend our own from Bellevue, Washington.
There's some other rabbis' parents who are out there tonight I can hook you up with who can tell you all about attending lots of services. So mazal tov to both of you.
Thank you.
Mom, if you would.
Okay. This is a Kiddush that we have traditionally sung at Temple B'nai Torah in Bellevue, Washington, and it's a little different from the way you do it, so bear with me. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushan b'mitzvotav v'ratzav banu v'shabbat kodesho ve'ahavahu ratzon hilanu zikaron l'mahaseh v'reishit ki hu yom tehillah l'mikrahe kodesh zecher l'tziat mitzrayim zecher l'tziat mitzrayim ki banu baharta ve'tanu kidashta mikol hamim v'shabbat kodecha ve'ahavahu ratzon hinhaltanu baruch atah Adonai mikadesh hashabbat. Amen, amen, amen.
L'chaim.
L'chaim. That was awesome.
Thank you so much. And do we, Rabbi Graf, do we have a challah in the house this evening or not this evening?
You know, I believe that we might have a teeny tiny Barbie challah, but it's not here right this second. So I'll let other people hold them up and see if we can get ours.
Ah, all right. The teeny tiny is always, well, we have Bill Shore's challah, which is beautiful. Has it decided to attack his screen. Very, very nice. Thank you, Bill and Shira, who I think is over there. And I imagine, yep, hello. Oh, there was another challah, Pearl and Robert, showing off a big, beautiful challah. Triple braid, nicely done. Oh my goodness, all kinds of excellent challot out there. As we see if we can retrieve a tiny one, we get to see all the giant ones as well. All right. We have actually kind of a nice little one here too, but I left it in the other room, so I'll just pretend that I've got it here and it's beautiful. Jimena, that's beautiful. It's so glossy. I love it.
And Miss Ari would like, it is beautiful. Miss Ari would like to show you her teeny tiny Barbie challah as well. Teeny tiny and full of color. Would you like to say anything about your challah? Not a thing? Okay. You braided it yourself?
Yes.
It's pretty gorgeous. Okay, you want to lead the blessing? Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. B'tei avon, everybody.
B'tei avon. Thank you to everyone who showed us beautiful chalot, especially you, Ari. Very nice. Yours is always the most colorful one. Well, we're going to conclude our service with some song, and in keeping with Rabbi Graf's words about discourse this evening, we're going to conclude with a song of peace, a reminder of the importance of maintaining peace among all peoples. So please join us for Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu. May peace once again come to us.
עוד יבוא שלום עלינו, עוד יבוא שלום עלינו, עוד יבוא שלום עלינו ועל כולם. עוד יבוא שלום עלינו, עוד יבוא שלום עלינו, עוד יבוא שלום עלינו ועל כולם. סלם עלינו ועל כל העולם. סלם, סלם, סלם עלינו ועל כל העולם. סלם, סלם. עוד יבוא שלום עלינו, עוד יבוא שלום עלינו, עוד יבוא שלום עלינו ועל כולם. עוד יבוא שלום עלינו, עוד יבוא שלום עלינו, עוד יבוא שלום עלינו ועל כולם. סלם עלינו ועל כל העולם. סלם, סלם, סלם עלינו ועל כל העולם. סלם, סלם. עוד יבוא שלום עלינו, עוד יבוא שלום עלינו, עוד יבוא שלום עלינו ועל כולם. יאללה לי 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 לי, יאללה לי 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 לי, יאללה לי 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 לי, יאללה לי 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 לי, יאללה לי 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 לי, יאללה לי 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 לי, יאללה לי 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 לי, יאללה לי 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 לי, יאללה לי לי לי, יאללה לי 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 לי.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shalom.